the pricing, because I think that is a big issue as well compared to international market. Why is South Korea also getting it at a discounted price? Is this an incentive maybe to lure them? Or maybe you can tell us more about that. So, and that particular difference of 680 shillings that is just lost in the shuffle, would you maybe care also to tell us where is it going?
Okay, thank you, Diba. Let me first of all start with, I think, Prof. Comment, and I think also Mheshimiwa, and I think also I can respond to Dr. McPhay's comment. I think Prof captured this issue very succinctly.
Okay.
You have a marketer, like Sokoni, who is supposed to be employed by the farmer. Mm-hmm. He's the one who's taking the coffee. He's the one who knows the price. Mm-hmm. And he's the one who receives the money and decides when to give the farmer. So imagine, and he put it very simple. You employ somebody to go and collect, rent for you. Mm-hmm. This is the same person who knows how much that rent is, because in most cases, farmers have no idea. Then this is a person who is given the money, and he decides when to pay the person who employs them. Why is it historical, Mheshimiwa? It is historical in the sense that under the previous regime, you still have direct sales. There were still people who are selling coffee directly to the US and whatever, and another destination. But that sale was again still done through a marketer. So the farmers they were always in the dark. They didn't know how much these prices was, even how much they are paid. Mm-hmm. What I think McPhay is saying and Muribe is saying, there's no idea the farmer knows how that coffee was sold. The person who owns that coffee, he has no idea whether that coffee was sold to 10 shillings or whatever amount was sold. So what's so historical about this particular transaction, the farmer themselves through the cooperative were negotiating these prices with the buyer. Now, mind you, in this transaction, under the pre-sale regime, they still have to pay the marketer. They still have to pay the mirror. But in these cases, KTN are making their own coffee, and they don't have an expense to pay for the buyer. It might look as if it's cheap, but the return the farmers get is much higher than what they would have got going through Sokoni. It's true, Morit would have sold for 10 shillings. But how much money is this going to the farmer?
But where is that particular aspect of also marketing? Because I think also Honorable Sako is raising that particular, which is very pivotal at the end of the day. Do they have the wherewithal of marketing their own coffee?
But you see, Diba, I mean, that's a myth that we need to demystify here. Yeah. There's nothing very difficult to market your own coffee. And that the myth has been perpetuated all throughout, that the marketing is this very difficult thing that nobody can be able to do. And by the way, the two who marketing are just trading. They don't market. They just take coffee to the auction and trade. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that KTN were able to renegotiate with the buyer. And I can tell you I was the prefect of that discussion. They will say, we need to buy this much. No, we cannot buy it, we need this much. So the key difference, it might look as if they were sold a little bit lower, but their return that they're getting is much higher than what they have gone if they have gone through the market. So to speak, the balances of trade, if I may use that particular lingo, is not really skewed against us. Precisely. I mean, it's two things. Either you go through the market, you get a better premium, but then you also charges that you have to pay. You have to pay the about 2.5% to the marketer. You also have to pay the mirror.
Thank you.
The other thing I would like to underscore, which I think is important, I think I would like us again to what Prof said. The issue in the trading auction here, there's so much inside trading. Mm-hmm. Because what we discovered is that the marketer, the miller, and the buyer are symbiotically, they're vertically integrated. Mm. They're almost like one the same person. So meaning that the price we're getting in the auction is not efficient price.
Mm-hmm. It's not a genuine one.
Is it not? It's not because you don't have that efficient. The whole idea from an economic standpoint, the way you get an efficient market discovery process, it is when you have many buyers and many sellers.
Thank you.
Okay?
Right.
And then in that case, we will not to know the price. But in this case, in the auction, you have what you call monopolistic power. Mm-hmm. You have very few buyer who is buying coffee. So again, it is historical in the sense, and I want to repeat because I think, and this is what I want Mheshimiwa to really get. It is historical in the sense that for the first time, you didn't have the intermediary to facilitate this transaction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, and I think this particular case has been raised also with the Honorable Munya saying that these marketing agents also have been doubling up as coffee buyers, as Kay is saying, and looking at the Coffee Bill 2021, has it been shaken into place? Is it an act right now? It was undergoing public participation, but then this was meant to be a thing of the past. Let me just hear from Professor Collins Odote.
Well, I've listened to the debate from my colleagues, and while there are points that we make, I think our eye must be kept on the big picture. And the big picture is a very fundamental one. And the big picture is, at the end of the day, under which of the two approaches is the farmer getting value for money? That's the critical conversation. And we need to keep that at the back of mind. And I listened to Dr. McPhee, and as Dr. McPhee spoke, I had two sides of the argument. On the one hand, he gave us the economic that says, they could have gotten more. But on the other hand, he says, but this law is actually preventing other people from selling also directly. Meaning, he concedes that selling directly is a good thing. The only debate is about who benefits more and the other. And I think at the end of the day, for me, the marketers are an important part of our economy because they create employment. The one thing that we should not run away from is that the past has been skewed against the farmer, and that ends up resulting to some fundamental thing you said, the amount of coffee that we sell. The figures have been going down, and the figures have been going down because the people who are doing the traditional production, I think Agriculture 101, the factors of production, the typical producer has been saying, I'm not getting value for money. So whatever else we do, we must ensure that the typical producer gets value for money. The fact that I agree with Dr. Bunyasi is that as we celebrate this, we must ensure that the dangers that come in terms of international trade that will make the process not sustainable get addressed by government. I think when you trade with the international market, especially the EU, issues around sanitary and phytosanitary issues become critical. What quality of products are you getting? Are they quality that are you addressing the environmental issues? Are you addressing the health issues? Number two, how do we ensure that the farmer who is selling directly, as they did in South Korea, the facilitation that they got this time is not a one-off, so that they are able to do it on a regular basis. What kind of support do they get? I think for me that's where we must be able to go to. Because if we don't do so, we'll get lost in the debate about, no, this is not nice. At the end of the day, if this is my seat, I must feel comfortable with it, and everybody else must help me to feel comfortable. I think that's what the debate must focus on.
All right, Honorable Bunyasi, because when you're looking at the acreage under which also coffee production has been growing, that has been significantly decreasing over time by over 30%. We had about from 170,000 hectares in early 90s to about 119,000 hectares in 2020. Why should we be touting ourselves as a coffee exporting country? And we've been also, running under that tag and saying, yes, Kenya is, this is one of the commodities that we can actually be banking on, as it were. But Ethiopia has been beating us to the punch, looking at the Arabica and how also it is excelling in the international market at the end of the day. So if we have a contracting production center that is over the years going to also contract until now, no one is really happy growing coffee in this country. Should we be paying much premium to this particular commodity?
Thanks, Debal. First of all, the one variable in the world for the whole history of coffee that has determined its rentability, its return, is the frost in Brazil. Natural phenomenon. When that occurs, our prices go up. Irrespective of how inefficient you are, you get a little more in the market. When you are doing a careful analysis, you have to look at what Professor McPhee mentioned, what is happening in the global market that may have provided a premium to producers not affected, for example, by frost. You net that away. Then you begin now getting into niche markets. Niche markets where somebody is able to sell X 100 kilos or 1,000 kilos to ex-buyer in some corner. Sometimes maybe as simple as a tourist who has visited Kenya and has discovered this and goes back and makes an arrangement. So I think we have to look at how it's going to affect the market generally. It will not in any way, shape and form take away the intermediary person, because not all of them are what do you call it, are mining the advantage that they have got. But I think that in respect of Kenya, the biggest problem we have is inefficiencies in the domestic management of the marketing chain. The things that have been described that are happening, insider trading and so on, which are real, these are things that need to be fixed properly. They can't be fixed so that you maximize the premium that is obtained, and in that process, hope that it will go also to the farmer. It will go to other players as well, that the farmer can get more. We want to encourage the Kericho experiment. I think it's good. It should grow big. It should be sustainable. But we cannot expect that individual coffee societies will operate broadly across the world without protection. Remember that the buyers are not always benevolent buyers. They can take advantage of the sellers from here. So let us just be sure that even as they refuse the old arrangements, that there will be a way in which they can protect themselves, perhaps by sharing information, by working together, and there will always be need at the end of the day for some legal, financial, other form of protection or readiness by government to step in and support the exporters. I think it's a good thing. If we can pray and get permanent frost in Brazil, we'll even do more. But as I conclude, that's on a light note. But as I conclude on this, whether or not the acreage of coffee will be sustained will depend also on the alternative returns. That, for example, in Kiambu, the lands will reduce more because of the pressure of real estate. And the real estate coffee can't compete with the returns that are brought on by real estate. So I think depending on the location of the coffee, that's why it's expanding in odd places. Like, again, going back to Bungoma, even Busia the other day, I saw somebody who is exporting to the Middle East directly also, and who is really working hard on getting farmers to bring in coffee. There will be new areas in Kenya, new parts of Kenya that might be able to grow coffee to replace a bit what we are losing in central Kenya, to higher value returns on the land and to the farm and to the owners by real estate. You can't compete with real estate, so you have to open up market. You have to open up production possibilities in odd areas that perhaps were not at the forefront. But let us be broad-minded about this. That frost in Brazil is the single biggest factor on returns on coffee. Period.
Thank you. All right, McPhee, if we may just also look at the report, if my director may just put up that particular report there, where we had the 12th Parliament third session in 2019 report of the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock on the inquiry into challenges of the Coffee Research Institute. Tucked away inside that particular report is that the committee was informed that about 70% of Kenyan coffee is produced by small-scale holders who are required by law to process and sell their coffee through the local cooperative societies, while remaining 30% is produced by the big, of course, players there, the coffee estate farmers. Now, I wonder, and I don't know if you're intimately familiar with the current coffee bill as well, that with this new development, how then is this particular law sort of a kink or a tripping wire for the farmers? Briefly.
Well, you know, it's always difficult dealing with cooperatives because, unfortunately, there is an incredible amount of corruption there. And, you know, I don't want to be specific here, but, you know, the fact is that one of the reasons why farmers get less than what they do is because of the corruption at the head of cooperatives. And, you know, so I think, you know, one of the problems we've got to, I think, face is that we need a liberalized market rather than being constrained by new laws and new regulations, okay, which, you know, they're very, very well intended, but I think it's so important. You see, what I always say is that our regulators in Kenya are not people who are involved in business. And we have an excessive regulation in Kenya. And this new law is bringing in rules and regulations which are just going to hamper the coffee industry rather than liberate it. You know, it's very easy. We have the frost in Brazil, the price went up, and, you know, one of the most difficult things is to relate cause and effect. And, you know, I could give you many examples about that, but I think, you know, we can't say now the new law has this effect of increasing the price at which this coffee is sold. If you go back a couple of years ago, Kenya coffee was selling at $4.50 per kilo. It's now, as I say, at $7.38 per kilo, because precisely of what Honourable Bunyasi was talking about. So, you know, the situation is, we can very easily say, well, this is the result of these new regulations. Pole, it isn't. That is not the cause. The cause is precisely what Honourable Bunyasi was talking about.
Okay. Let me just ask also regarding the quality, because yes, we can be having this particular export directly to South Korea, and you raised the issue of quality as well. Quality at the end of the day is a big issue. And Coffee Research Institute, primarily where Dr. Esele Simiyu wanted to buy the seedlings, and he found that particular institute in a deplorable situation, is what really, as I mentioned, emanated this particular conversation, and the task was coming to being as well. But even as we focus on this bulk exporting at the end of the day, what sort of quality coffee are we exporting? That should be the question that maybe primarily Professor Kia should tell us. Yeah, compared to Ethiopia, when we look at the Arabica, we're talking about Ruiru, is it 3 or 2 here?
11, yeah.
Yes, yes. Where then do we... Yes.
Let me also, again, try to explain, and I think what Dr. McPhee is saying is absolutely right, and the whole regulatory framework, we were very, very keen about it. But the Kenyan coffee is based on quality. The premium price that we get, almost 10% above the global prices, it is because of the Kenyan quality, of the Kenyan quality. And this emanates from our geographical location. These are God-given.
The geographical locations.
We are in volcanic soil, we're near the equator, and this cannot replicate anywhere. You mentioned there are 2 major exporters of coffee in Africa. Ethiopia is one of them, and Uganda. Uganda is doing almost like 5 million bags, okay? Mostly Robusta and Arabica. But ideally, for us doing 700,000 bags, we are making more money than Uganda. So what we have to deal with, we thought that we could liberalize. But
should Uganda be your benchmark? Why can't we just benchmark ourselves with Ethiopia?
It's true, but I'll come to that in a few minutes. So we have to deal with, we thought if we liberalize coffee, in other words, like you allow what you call the hawking of coffee or farm gate prices, will be compromised with the quality. So we thought it is important that, it's important for us to allow the coffee farmers or embrace the proper rights of coffee to the farmer. We were very keen that we also need to protect this quality, because that is what, giving us the, the high quality. The bar, if I can probably, capture this in a more succinct way, we are producing Mercedes, but we are marketing as a tuk-tuk. Now, the quality has deteriorated because obviously the returns of the payment has not been very good. But we thought from a government point of view, it is important for us to ensure that this quality of coffee is protected. Now, on the Coffee Research Institute, the bills that we are putting in place is to ensure, again, the Coffee Research Institute remain as an institute where, either some of these policies are being, are being driven, but also the fact that historically, this institute has been the pioneer and the leader on the on the coffee research for a very long time. I remember when we went to benchmark in Ethiopia when you're doing the task force, one of the things that Ethiopians told us is, sort of, Prof, why are you coming to benchmark on Ethiopia? All we know we learn from Kenya. So, in a nutshell, what makes Ethiopia unique than us, obviously they produce more coffee than us because they have bigger farms. But I think the unique about Ethiopian coffee, they also consume half of their own coffee. So they are really shielded from this capricious movement of the global prices. In the Kenyan case, we consume like 5%. So meaning, if there's some changes in the international market, surely that will affect us. It is important that Mheshimiwa said that, and it's true. Maybe the impact on the frost on Brazilian coffee and Colombian coffee will have an impact on our side. But I think entirely, and I think I keep on coming back why this is important, is that for the first time the Kenyan coffee farmer do have an option. They can either choose to sell their coffee directly or come through the auction.
All right. Dr. Mafi, you wanted to interject a bit?
Not really.
Yes.
I just, I want to reiterate the point that, for example, in the case of James Murithi, he will get the very best price. You see, I think, one of the situations about quality is you have to look after your coffee. And a number of years ago, James Murithi sold for a cooperative. As you go up from Sagana towards Karatina, there's a cooperative on the right there which produces very high quality coffee. Why? Because those men there work really well on their estates. And James Murithi sold that coffee privately, because you will sell privately if you can get a premium over the auction price, but he sold that coffee at $13.50 per kilo. He gave me the name of the estate. I forget what it is. But that particular cooperative sold it at that price. And again, it was due to the factors that Honorable Bunyasi was talking about. There's a shortage in the world. Why? Because of the frost in Brazil, and we got these incredibly good prices. Now, a couple of years ago, the price went down enormously. Why? Because Brazil had very, very good weather, and so did Vietnam. Vietnam is the second largest producer of coffee in the world. The production in Brazil increased by 25%, so did it in Vietnam. The price went down, and what did the farmers get here? A very low price. But, try to go to explain. I've tried to explain to individual farmers the situation of the international market. And they don't understand what I'm talking about, because for them, ni hapa tu, it's not, but if you don't look at the international market, if you try to work outside that international market, you're going to get your fingers burned. And so, let's see in a year's time whether Professor Kaya's proposals are going to be as effective as they are today. And they're effective today because of precisely what Honorable Bunyasi was talking about.
Thank you.
So he has the answer.
He has the answer. All right, he has the answer. I think then we should wind it on that, unless Professor Collins Odoto, you wanted to say something briefly.
Two things.
Yes, let's wind it up on that, and then we continue also
the
with
first
another
one,
topic.
At least Dr. McPhee ends where he should have started. They are effective today. He started by saying they were not. At least now he says they're effective. The second is, I think we've had, there's been complaints about that, we should not have too much regulation. All we require is liberalization. I think too much regulation is dangerous. But I think too much liberalization is also dangerous. Because a free market which is unregulated can be rogue. And I think that's what we are dealing with. So I think we need to create a balance. So it's not either or, it's about creating the correct balance. Cooperatives are a good thing because they bring in economies of scale. But true, as Dr. McAfee says, cooperatives, like several sectors of our economy, have been afflicted by corruption. So it is not that by nature cooperatives are bad. It is that the cooperative sector, like every other sector, has been captured by cartels. So even as we reform, even as we say let farmers sell directly, we must ensure that the cooperatives do not become another avenue for them being fleeced. So our eye must always be, how do we ensure that the farmers benefit today, as Dr. McPhee and the rest of us now agree, but also they benefit next year, as all of us are hoping that will happen.
All right. Of course, Professor Kea, these reforms are ongoing. We give you the full support to see, yes, sobriety in that particular sector. Thank you for what you've been doing. Of course, also the issues that have been raised by McPhee and Honorable Bunyasi. Bunyasi, if you wanted just to wind up on that as well, I'll give you an opportunity, and also Kea, so that we can actually move on to another topic. We actually stop for time.
Okay. Thank you, Debal. I would like to use the example of Ivory Coast as a country, which has slightly different philosophy. For example, when they entered the cocoa market, their intention was to become one of the largest producers in the world. For a while, they led. In pineapples, they did the same. Their coffee production did come out the largest, but it grew from very little to a very huge industry. They believed that with large production bases, you reach out to a lot more farmers, for example. You can even out the risks, as it were. And this issue of going for the singularity of a very high value production, but a very small pincer point quantity on the market should be discussed broadly. It's not an either or thing, but I think we should think about it. We have a large number of athletes, for example. Only a few of them are global winners. But the fact that we have this large number, the earnings are big that come in. They are very big by the winners, but the winners are not many enough, usually by definition, because others are also going to the market. So Kenya has to think through. I think we should maximize our opportunities to grow coffee, to grow tea, or grow any of these other crops that we want, and not be fixated by a few successes. Success is good. The challenge that Professor Kea has got is how to broaden that success and make it, for example, no less than about half the value of production in the industry. So the Ivory Coast example is slightly different in approach from ours. And I don't know, Professor McPhee and Professor Kea probably are more up to date on how that has turned out. By the Ivory Coast, it made them big giants of the global market, brought their economies to high middle income,
Thank you.
And so on. So there are other models that we should look at.
Thank you very much. All right, I can see we are really pinched for time. I'm wondering if I should introduce this topic, but maybe we can just have a cursory look at it, and then we'll delve deeper on it next time, because I think also this is a big issue as well, where the National Oil Corporation of Kenya is pushing